Hello, everyone, and happy Tuesday. This is Series 4, live number 6. It is also the last live in the series. And I thought the last live, what's more perfect than talking about tough conversations? Like, this is our last live. That's a bit of a tough conversation for those of you following along. But this is a serious topic. We all encounter tough conversations, whether it is in our personal lives with our family, our friends, our colleagues, or in our professional lives, just trying to navigate how do we have a conversation with our boss about a pay increase or a pay rise? How do we talk to our teammates about something not working or somebody's particular style being a bit grating? How do we have a conversation with human resources that we don't feel included? I don't want us to have that conversation, but we do. How do we have a conversation with our boss about things that aren't working or how they're interacting with us? So, no matter where you are in the hierarchy, and unfortunately, yes, there's still quite the hierarchy in organizations, but no matter where you are in the hierarchy, you're going to find yourself one day, if not already, in a situation where you have to have one of those really tough conversations. So, what can you do? Now, I have recorded talks on this before, so you know me, I like to repeat myself and make sure I drive that point home for you. But I want to make sure that you keep hearing some techniques that you can use. And if you're really uncomfortable with these conversations, whether they be written or verbal, then my advice is going to be the same every single time. And that is write it down, outline it, practice it. And you're thinking, well, what am I supposed to do? Read off the paper? No, you're not. That's not what I'm suggesting. So let's not go there. So, what I am suggesting, however, is that you find a safe person, but also an honest person that you can have these tough conversations with. So, if there's something you're not sure how it's going to be perceived, have that conversation with someone else. But if you pick someone who always agrees with you, who always goes along with what you say, is never going to say to your face, Indra, bad idea, then don't use that person as your sounding board. Okay. So, some ideas. If you need to send someone an email, and this is a good practice exercise, even if it's not a tough conversation, just to see how people are perceiving your emails. And here's why. Story time. Many years ago, when I was working in the government, many of you don't know that, I had hundreds of emails to answer every day, quite early in the morning, because I was working in 12 different time zones. And I would get in, take my coat off, open up everything, sit down, and get right to it. It was like focus, 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 focus. Hadn't even gone to have my cup of tea yet. And one day, a coworker stopped me and she said, "You know, that email you sent yesterday was, well, I don't know how to tell you this, but it was just a bit short. It was a bit, I don't know, it just was short." And I thought, what email was she on? Oh, she was copied on an email. Okay. And I said, "Well, did it provide the information required?" "Well, yes, but you could have a bit of a lead in. You could," and I just listened to her and I thought, okay, we're having a bit of a disconnect here because she and I have very different jobs. And it's not that one job was more important than the other, but very different jobs. And she does not really actually have a clear understanding of what my job is on the time schedule we're on. But I'm going to take on board what she's saying and I'm going to examine my messages. And I'm also going to go to the source, to the horse's mouth, and just check in with some of the people that I'm sending these emails to and see if they're having a problem with what I'm sending and how I'm sending it. Well, it turns out they weren't. They were super, super thankful that I was just getting in there and getting them the answers and the information they needed as quickly as possible because they didn't really have the time to wait. And the reality was, she wanted hearts and flowers and pleasantries, and my recipients of my messages didn't because they just needed the information to help solve critical problems. So sometimes the person that receives the message and how they perceive it. It's not really something you need to change in your style. It's just an understanding where you're coming from. But other times, your message may not be received in the best light. So here's some ideas. Next time you have an email, especially if it's one that has maybe a lot of points in it or a lot of information, type up the email and send it to someone who is not going to receive the real email, the actual email. Type it up and send it to a neutral party. But again, remember, send it to someone who's going to give you honest feedback. And I am not talking about, well, on the third line, you misspelled this word and you should have had a comma here. No, I'm not talking about somebody who is, a grammar person who's going to proofread it for grammar. I want you to send it to someone who is going to pay attention to the tone, your word choices, not from a grammar standpoint, but from an intention, and is really going to give you feedback on when they read that email, what was their takeaway? What did they get out of it? How did they perceive your message? If you can send it to 3 or 4 people, I know people are busy and they don't always have time. If you can send it to 3 or 4 people, that's even better. And get the feedback. Have a conversation with someone if you don't understand their feedback, and then recraft the message and send that to them again and say, did I take on board what you were saying? Did I change the message? Did I change the tone? So if you have never done that before, do it, because I pride myself in being a pretty good writer and a pretty clear writer. Sometimes I get a little bit verbose and then I go through and I cut it out. But I've always prided myself on being pretty straightforward with my messages. But everyone has room to grow. And even I have done this exercise and sent it to people and realized what I thought was a perfectly clear message was not necessarily so clear to the recipient. So that's one exercise I'd like you to try. The other one is with practicing the actual verbal conversations. And if you find yourself in a position where you're really uncomfortable, if you don't prepare, you're going to be even more uncomfortable and stumbling and stuttering when you try to introduce that topic. So, first, outline what it is that you want to say. I don't mean script it word for word, but have a clear outline of the points that you want to make, because chances are if you're having a difficult conversation, it's either confrontational or it's with someone above you in the chain of command and you're feeling a bit overwhelmed about it and you don't want to waste anybody's time with trying to get to the point. We've all been in this conversation where we're just thinking, okay, all right, Bob, any day, Bob, when you get to the point, I'll be here any day. We don't want to be that person. So think about, what are the key points? If you have more than 5 key points, stop, because you're preparing a webinar. You are not preparing a conversation with someone. But get your key points down, because that's a good way to identify if you have too many key points and if you're making a speech instead of having a conversation. So what are the key points? Also think about and write down, what are the outcomes that you want to achieve? That doesn't mean you're going to get them, but if the conversation goes perfectly, what would the outcome be? Or the outcomes? Okay, so those are 2 things. What are your value points and what are your hoped for or intended outcomes? And then think about how you want to start that conversation. And write out, word for word, the first 3 sentences you want to say to the person. You do not need to include hello, good morning, how are you, but don't forget those. They're important. You don't need to write those down. If you're afraid you're going to forget them and you want to practice them, fine, but they're not part of your 3 sentences. So write down the first 3 sentences that you want to say to someone. And then read it again. Read it out loud as if you were saying it. Think about, did I just ramble on, or was I like, so Bob, I need a blah, 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 and a blah, 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 and a blah, 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 and you've just blurted it out. Or if you were too short and it sounds like you're already on the defensive. So say it. Now, there'll be people say, oh, go stand in front of a mirror. Oh, please. To me, that's like a dagger in my heart that's as bad as doing videos. Oh, wait, what am I doing? A video. Yes. Not super comfortable place for me. So standing in front of a mirror would not make me more comfortable and not make me feel natural. But you do you. And if that works for you, do it. Then find two people, again, neutral parties. They might be people who are familiar with the environment in which you need to have the conversation, but they don't have to be. But again, they do have to be the kind of people who will give you honest and constructive feedback. So then you're going to have this conversation with those two people, and one of the person is going to be the person who receives your message. So that think of it as the person you're talking to. And you may or may not choose to give them some background about that person because you don't want to color their impression necessarily. And the other person's just going to be the silent observer, and they're going to listen to you and do nothing except listen. And you're going to give your three sentences as naturally as possible. If you're reading them off the paper, then it's not natural. So practice it to the point where you're familiar with what you want to say without reading off the paper. And then ask those two people for feedback. One, as the person who's receiving your message, how did that make them feel? What was their reaction? What did they hear? And then the observer, how did they react and how did they feel? And then with their feedback in mind and your three values and what you want to get out of the conversation, recraft the message and repeat the exercise. So those are two things that I do in my group coaching. So we explore those in detail. That's a major, major lesson that we do. But also, those are things that you can try on your own. And it's something that if you set up a free consultation with me, and you're saying you're having trouble with a conversation, I will probably do that with you during our free consultation. So this is a really, really critical topic. Other things we explore on that same topic, using liberating structures for teams to have different ways to communicate and see how they're being perceived. And then we also take a look at, like, how do people describe you, because that can impact too how you're delivering your messages and how you're perceived. So that is our talk for today, our last live in series 4. If you have any ideas on topics you would like for series 5, which we may be able to get scheduled before the summer break, let us know. But I'm thinking of bringing our consultants in and having them do the conversations, maybe do their own talks or some interviews. But if you have topics, please let me know. In the meantime, follow us on the socials: Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever you're comfortable using. We post there almost every day during the business week. And if you are interested in learning more about this topic or any of the other topics we've explored, like I said, they're all part of our leadership and our teamwork group coaching programs that are starting up soon. And I'd be happy to talk to you about whether or not this particular platform is a good fit for you. In the meantime, thank you as always for joining our series of lives. It's been a blast. I can't believe we've finished 4 series already. All of them are on the YouTube channel, so you can watch them all in replay. But until next time, which will either be series 5 or on our socials, bye everybody.